Have you ever lost a game? I have. Many people have. Some people lose a lot, some people win a lot. It's the way that competition has to go. A winner and a loser have to be decided in some way, shape, or form. But if there's one thing that knows a lot about winning, it's Blizzard Entertainment. Founded by Alan Adam, Michael Morhaime, and Frank Pierce, Blizzard Entertainment was originally founded under the name Silicon and Synapse Incorporated in 1991, and later rebranded as Chaos Studios Inc. in 1993, before finally settling on Blizzard Entertainment in 1994. Blizzard Entertainment, Chaos Studios, and Silicon and Synapse Incorporated are very famous for a couple of their brands, such as World of Warcraft, Diablo, and The Lost Vikings. The focus of today is to talk about an IP that Blizzard created that originally wasn't meant to be what it is today. Overwatch, at that point called Project Titan, was supposed to be an MMO of the likes of World of Warcraft, but instead of fantasy, focusing on more sci-fi and futuristic elements. However, partially through development, Overwatch became a hero shooter of the likes of Team Fortress 2. Overwatch was first unveiled to the public at BlizzCon 2014, where it would later become a closed beta access in 2015. Immediately, Overwatch garnered a lot of attention and popularity, due to both its very colorful cast of individually unique characters, as well as a fast-paced, teamwork-oriented gameplay loop. The competitive nature of the game lended itself perfectly to esports. For a few years, Blizzard itself stayed away from competitive Overwatch and allowed the community to grow a grassroots tournament for almost every single event. But in 2016, Blizzard officially announced that they would be creating the Overwatch League, a sports franchise league for Overwatch players to compete for a year-end tournament. Some people were confused at first at Blizzard's prospect of making a franchise league for an esport. However, Blizzard probably are just trying to cash in on the fan market, as having city-based teams have a clear person to cheer for if you are from their respective city. After sanding off all the rough edges, the Overwatch League began in January of 2018, debuting with 12 teams, 9 of which in North America, 1 of which in Europe, 1 of which in Korea, and the final one in China. With the rosters fully locked in and the tournament format officially selected, things are looking great for everyone, except for the Shanghai Dragons. The Shanghai Dragons roster consisted mostly of a core from LGD Gaming's Overwatch team, with a few side Chinese players pulled in from different respective teams. A reasonably good roster on paper. In the Overwatch preseason, they did go 0-2, getting completely stomped by the Seoul Dynasty, but putting up a competent 5 maps against the Boston Uprising. However, no actual footage of these games exist, as it was preseason and all of the VODs on Twitch were deleted, so you have to trust me on that one. However, the first game of the official season does have a VOD against the Los Angeles Gladiators, and while Shanghai won a few fights here and there, for the most part it was a complete slaughter, 0-4 against the Los Angeles Gladiators to start the season. Something interesting about the inaugural season of the Overwatch League was in fact the format in which it was played in. You see, teams only had to win 3 of their games in order to actually win the match, however 4 were always played. While this was almost certainly for seeding reasons, it still felt very demoralizing, as a team that completely got swept 0-3 probably didn't want to play a 4th map that they knew didn't matter. After losing their first game, the Shanghai Dragons probably weren't very concerned, as there were plenty more games to come. 2 days later, the Shanghai Dragons would face their next opponent in the San Francisco Shock.
So we scrimmed Shanghai a few times, and I don't want to leak their strats, but they're nasty.
And while the result for the Shanghai Dragons was still the same, they did manage to win a map, Lunar Colony. But at the end of the day, it was still a loss for the Shanghai Dragons. As the first weekend of the Overwatch League concluded, an 0-2 start for the Shanghai Dragons probably wasn't what they were looking for. But there's always next weekend, and 5 days later, the Houston Outlaws would be the next opponent for the Shanghai Dragons. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, the Houston Outlaws blew Shanghai out of the water, most likely due to the Houston Outlaws' proficiency with Widowmaker and D.Va. The Shanghai Dragons' next game would be against the Florida Mayhem, another 0-3 team at the time. However, despite having an 0-3 record, the Florida Mayhem had a secret weapon.
Logix is going to open things up here, and today we got a chance to see him on multiple heroes reinforce.
Yes, we started off with the Soldier, of course, and this is something they've run in the past, utilizing the high guard onto Dorado, but of course then we saw him flex onto the Tracer, and that has been the shining hero of Logix.
While Logix was primarily known for his hit scan like Soldier 76 and Widowmaker, he had an unbelievable Tracer in his back pocket, something that the Shanghai Dragons were not at all ready for, meaning the Shanghai Dragons very often took fights down one whole player. So with another loss in the books, the Shanghai Dragons hoped for next weekend to be more successful. Now at this point, if you consider the preseason, the Shanghai Dragons are 0-6, yet to win a game. And unfortunately, I am not going to go over every single game the Shanghai Dragons played. Instead, I'm going to give a brief summary as all of the events in Stage 1. Next weekend, while the Shanghai Dragons still lost both their series, they were undoubtedly the closest series yet. only losing 1-3 against the Seoul Dynasty and actually making a 5-map series against the Philadelphia Fusion. Next weekend, however, they wouldn't be so lucky, losing both games 0-4 against the New York Excelsior and London Spitfire. And the final weekend in Stage 1, concluding with a very close game against the Dallas Fuel, a 2-3 loss, and a hard-crushing defeat against the Los Angeles Valiant 0-4. At the end of Stage 1, the Shanghai Dragons now had an 0-12 record, only winning 8 of their total maps played and losing 43. But hopefully next stage, things would be different. Before Stage 2 could even begin, the Shanghai Dragons attempted to sign some new players, hopefully bringing some fresh blood into the team, allowing them to get their first win. Unfortunately, the next 4 series Shanghai played would all be losses, with only 1 map win between the 4 of them. Technically, they drew 1 map against the Los Angeles Valiant, but I don't count that as a win or a loss. The following weekend, it did get a map win against the Seoul Dynasty, a currently very strong team, but all that is a drop in the bucket, considering the Shanghai Dragons managed to lose the next 20 maps in a row. Not numbers that inspire very much confidence. From March 3rd until April 4th, the Shanghai Dragons didn't win a map. After this abysmal map loss streak, they tried to bring in even more players to iron out the bell curve, most likely to fill the void that Undead had left considering he left the team on March 29th. The Shanghai Dragons only won 2 maps in Stage 2. Combined with the previous season, this means that they had exactly 10 map wins, and 80 losses, meaning the Shanghai Dragons were 8 times more likely to lose a map than they were to win it. As Stage 3 began, stories from other players about the Shanghai Dragons began to surface, with some players claiming they've never seen the Shanghai Dragons leave their training facilities. Later, it would come to light that the Shanghai Dragons were training for 72 hours a week, getting to their training facilities at around 10:30 in the morning and leaving at around 11 at night. Doing anything for 12 hours is without a doubt exhausting. And when you start to consider that the Shanghai Dragons were the only Chinese team in the Overwatch League, the pressure to perform must have been at an all-time high. The training regimen was definitely not doing the Shanghai Dragons any favors, and I'm sure some of the games in the Shanghai Dragons' very long career history can be chalked up to not enough rest. After some stories about the Shanghai Dragons' abysmal training regimen came to light, many people began to sympathize with them, and the Shanghai Dragons garnered a whole new fandom. With new players and new fans, the Shanghai Dragons were hoping for a better Stage 3, and while some cool map wins appeared here and there, it mostly remained the same. But I can only speculate, as after Stage 2, none of the maps are available to watch, all of the VODs have been deleted, and there are no YouTube videos available on any of them, so I can only go off of map scores. Regardless of VOD watching, the map score for the Shanghai Dragons remained largely the same, with a 19 map win record and a 112 map loss record. Stage 4 for the Shanghai Dragons was doubtful, as due to the point system, they had already been eliminated from playoffs, so every game from this point forward was essentially about the other team's points. And while playing to not lose seems like a hopeless endeavor, the Shanghai Dragons did secure a few map wins. But map wins don't pay the bills. And after Stage 4 was over, the Shanghai Dragons bombed out in last place, losing all 40 of their matches with an abysmal 23 map wins and 148 map losses. Small side note, I just discovered while editing this that there actually is one last VOD to go through, the very last game of the regular season. Shanghai Dragons versus the San Francisco Shock. This is technically the Shanghai Dragons' very last game in 2018. So with the benefit of hindsight, let's see if we can go back and decipher why the Shanghai Dragons struggled so much with their regular season games. The first thing I noticed was that the Shanghai Dragons are running a relatively primitive version of GOATS. While this composition at the time is still in its infancy, it would become to be synonymous with Overwatch. The next thing I noticed was that the Shanghai Dragons, despite losing this series very hard, weren't getting completely rolled, winning fights decisively and fast. In fact, if you took all the names and logos and colors away from this game and told me that the Shanghai Dragons were actually the Los Angeles Valiant, I would have been inclined to believe you. On a more negative note, some of the Shanghai Dragons' fight losses can be summed up to team fight decision making. Very often, Shanghai Dragons decide to run down a member of the Shock who is not only in position, but completely ready to retaliate. This overextending means a lot of the Shanghai Dragons players get picked first, as many of the Shanghai Dragons players have to actively risk their own lives in order to pressure the opponent they are trying to kill. This very often leads to this situation happening, where the Shanghai Dragons are pressuring someone to either kill them or get them out of position to kill them, then either overcommit and lose all of their players as to diving too deep against a Brig Zenyatta comp, or having one of their players picked early from an off angle that they didn't account for. Another core problem with focusing all of your energy to kill one target is oftentimes losing focus of other aspects in a team fight. For example, look at this clip where Shanghai are posturing to take control of Lijiang Tower. Due to their hyper-focused goal of breaking Winston Bubble and pressuring Super, they fail to notice that Baby Bay is completely absent from the teamfight. Then he flanks on an angle, rolls in, flashbangs and kills the Moira, instantly ending the teamfight. As the Shanghai Dragons have already committed a large amount of resources to killing Super, and now don't have a Moira to sustain this teamfight that they've already taken. Later this same map, Shanghai Dragons are trying to retake the point and have managed to build almost all of their ultimates. Instead of devising a strategic game plan in order to win the fight with using as minimal ults as possible, they dump all of their ults into this fight, hoping for the best, meaning that they now have no ultimates to contest the San Francisco Shock's 80% objective progress. Because the Mercy and the Zenyatta didn't ult in this fight, that means that the Shock have an incredible advantage going into last fight. Another thing to mention is that the Shanghai Dragons have gone through some roster shuffles since the last game we watched, with 4 players on the roster being Korean and 8 of them being Chinese. I'm not saying that a language barrier is the core problem with this team, but I am saying that it exists. And that might explain some of the problems we've previously talked about. But I can speculate all day, and at the end of the day, the Shanghai Dragons are 0-40. And at the end of this season, after the playoffs have concluded, all of the Chinese players from the Shanghai Dragons quit the team. Going into next year, the Shanghai Dragons have a lot of work to do, mostly building their roster from the ground up. As previously mentioned, all of the Chinese players in the Shanghai Dragons, except for one, have left the team. And as some of the remaining players are still Korean, they mostly build an all-Korean roster. Coming into 2019, the Shanghai Dragons, with new blood in their veins, are finally looking for their first win. But it won't come just yet. Their first game of the regular season is against a new team, the Hangzhou Spark. That's right, in between stages 1 and 2, the Overwatch League has expanded its doors, increasing the amount of total teams from 12 to 20. However, 3 of these new teams would be Chinese teams, meaning the responsibility of being the Overwatch League's one and only Chinese team is no longer a burden for the Shanghai Dragons to bear. And while the Shanghai Dragons would love to donate their losing streak to the newly established Hangzhou Spark, that isn't going to happen. And the Shanghai Dragons once again lose 0-4. The next game Shanghai have to play isn't looking much better, as they have to face off against the Vancouver Titans, who right now, unbeknownst to many, are the greatest team in this tournament. After learning that, it's no shock to hear that Shanghai Dragons lost this game 0-4 again. And at this point, it feels like Shanghai will never win a game. Now, don't get me wrong, Shanghai have been close before, making it all the way to 5 maps against multiple teams last year. But that was an entirely different team. This team is new, young-blooded, and ready to win their first game. On the other side of the table for this next game is the Boston Uprising. But this Boston Uprising team is not the same as last year, and this new squad is struggling to find its footing. And while the Shanghai Dragons have been close to winning before, this was the best opportunity they were going to get.
Oh, good shots there from Ding. Opens things up with a kill onto Color Hex. That's going to be Boston playing way back over towards the dropship.
You know, I gotta be honest, I don't think the composition the Boston Uprising has chosen here is appropriate to deal with this air threat that Ding has brought to the table. There's no
not going to be able to find any kills. Skopsus here being pushed back, Primal Rage, out bomb. Not going to get anything for Gregory, but she makes it back through. Looking for the knockback. Color Hex, welcome to the Overwatch League. Say goodnight. He goes off the side. Axiom now going to get dropped, and the Shanghai Dragons are slaughtering Boston Uprising. They will take Ruins. They will take Ilios and kick things off for the win. You hear the audience cheering, let's go Dragons. Looking for that 2-0 start in the series. Halfway to that tick already right now. Axiom take it down. DM gets the double kill. Blase going to be eliminated as well. The Garbage Surge comes in. Will be taken out. EMP dumped in by Ding to try to turn things around. And it is going to work a treat. Note popped out. Eliminated. The tick comes through. And Shanghai Dragons lead the series 2-0.
No answer to the EMPs. Boston struggling to deal with Ding. And unfortunately, it's prediction on this one. But the Dragons have come in strong. No one could have known that Ding was just going to dismantle everyone. Here we go. Shanghai counting down, the Shanghai fans rather counting down.
The crowd had chanted "Let's go Dragons" before, and as a 0-0 turned into a 1-0, and then a 1-0 turned into a 2-0, it felt like everyone was holding their breath, but somehow the Shanghai fans couldn't have been louder.
Goes low. They haven't finished up the target. Everything to hack it on the Axiom. Ding takes it out. They're down onto the point, starting to tick their way up. The first one getting ready to come through. As it comes down, Youngchin staying alive. Kellick's knocked down a half HP. The first tick gonna be gained.
You can feel it.
Almost there, pushing from the back. They're ticking up again. Note's gonna be hacked. He's gonna be taken out of the mech. Finished off.
It's happening.
This could be it. The second tick getting ready to come through. Kellick's gonna be eliminated. Transcendence is out from Aim God, but it's gonna expire. They will be able to finish him off.
There you go.
They're gonna get it. Just a couple more percent to go. Let them have it, Boston. Axiom, top of the Primal Rage, but it does not matter. Ladies and gentlemen, history has been made. The Shanghai Dragons
defeating his old team tonight. Feels like a really emotional moment here, but I think we got to give the crowd their moment. They've waited a long time for this. All the Shanghai fans out there, fans in tears. They finally did it.
I'll just let the fans take us out to the break. Enjoy it.